Treasury Secretary Geithner meeting with the House Financial Services Committee later on this morning on regulatory reform proposals. And joining us on the Hill this morning, Republican Congressman Spencer Bachus from Alabama, the House Financial Services Committee ranking member. Congressman, great to have you back today.
Thanks, Carl.
It's been a while since this white paper's come out, and I guess people still have, we'll see what the Secretary says today, but does Congress have any idea how this might even begin to be put into a bill?
Well, I think we do in certain areas. We all agree that we need to close the gaps in the regulation. I think we all agree that we need a resolution authority for our non-bank financial institutions. I think where we separate is on things like how we best protect the consumer. And, of course, the Democrats and the administration want to form an all-new agency, sort of like a new Homeland Security, where we believe that you shouldn't separate the safety and soundness function from consumer protection.
Yeah, your view, and it's an interesting one, you say the key theme of the administration is rationing, cap and trade, rations energy use, health care, obviously, which is a dynamic thing right now, rations health care and choice in your view, and then rationing credit to consumers and businesses through these regulations, right?
That's right. And in fact, that is a common theme, whether it's health care, whether it's energy. It's sort of the micromanagement, and they do that with financial services. They'll take a look at every product and they'll determine whether it's appropriate for a consumer. Well, Carl or Joe or Becky, each of you know that what may be appropriate for you may not be appropriate for someone else. But they will actually try to force everything into what we call a plain vanilla envelope. And it's sort of like saying that we're going to decide which doctor you go see. You know, there are a lot of sophisticated investors that things are very appropriate for them that they may not be for someone else. But either the individual makes that choice or the government makes that choice. Yeah. And in America, the individual does.
Joe's ears perked up, and Becky's too, when you said their name.
Whenever like a major congressman or senator knows who I am, I just feel...
But we also have Jim Nussle here.
Yeah, and Jim Nussle's here too. He was a little bit hurt. He was a little bit hurt.
Out of this equation here. What about me? That's what I want to know.
Well, I didn't know Jim was there. See, I'm not seeing you live. I'm just looking into a camera. But hey, Jim, it's good to see you.
Thanks for your leadership on this. The thought piece you wrote was a great kickoff. My question is, I mean, it's kind of popular to attack big financial and the complicated instruments that are out there. Are you worried at all about a kind of a Sarbanes-Oxley snapback effect by Congress where they you just go too far and as a result make it more difficult in the financial sector to do the job that they need to do?
Yeah, Jim, I think you can't demonize Wall Street and you can't demonize profits or the capital, our free enterprise system. You know, and really a lot of what's being proposed is almost like profits are bad. Well, you know, I hope, and I think the Federal Reserve and most investors and Main Street better hope that our corporations are profitable and that they then reinvest that. You know, if they lose money, we all lose.
Is the goal transparency? Is that, I mean, that to me seems to be the _1 goal. Can we make this more transparent?
Well, you know, you need transparency in disclosures. You know, there are contracts are so complicated, and I'm talking about consumer contracts, right, mortgages, and things of that nature, where you have to really, I guess the complex thing about transparency is when you deal with the Fed. You know, I'm forgiving the GAO Audit Authority, particularly when they start bailing out individual companies and naming winners and losers. But, you know, you don't want them to lose that independence. So you have to be careful what you do when you throw that process open. And, of course, you know, Ron Paul has his views. I have similar views, but, you know, there are differences.
Congressman, you mentioned health care. That's not why you're on, but we had Congressman Schwartz on, and I asked her whether, you know, the calls coming into her office, what they were like in recent weeks, given, you know, all the things we've seen with health care going back and forth. She told me all the calls going to her office were that the status quo can't stay. We need a public option. You're in Alabama. Maybe it's different than Pennsylvania. But are those the calls coming to your office, that everybody wants the public option and no one wants the private insurance anymore?
No, I think the calls probably in both Alabama and Pennsylvania are saying, you know, I want to choose my doctor. I don't want the government choosing what procedures I can get. And like they do in Oregon or in most countries that have nationalized health care, I don't want sanctioning. I don't want them to tell me that because I'm a certain age, I don't get a certain care. And if people say that scare tactics, let me just say that we have a documented case in Oregon where an elderly lady applied for a certain procedure and she was told she couldn't get that, but she was eligible for assisted suicide. We know in Canada, we know in Europe that they ration care. So I'm a little surprised.
You say it with such a straight face. I mean, it's incredible what you just said.
Yeah.
Well, you know, that actually happened,
Yeah.
and you know, but it happens in Canada. It happens in Europe all the time.
Right.
They say that some people, you know, in fact, you know, it's this idea that we're just going to make an economic decision that you don't get that operation or procedure. But I'll tell you, the calls are really going to come in if this thing passes and people lose their employer-provided health care and they go to something less.
Congressman, though, is there a real sense? I mean, we hear about these horror stories on both sides, people who don't have insurance, who have had horrible things happen to them, people who have insurance that has not covered them with both of these problems. Is there a commitment on both sides of the aisles to make sure that there is some sort of reform that does two things? One, cuts back on costs, and two, extends coverage to people who don't have it?
Becky, thanks for saying that. I think that's all of our greatest concern, and that's an area where I think we're all committed. I know John Shattuck's got a bill. We have worked on bills to allow pooling, to have some sort of coverage for the uninsured or those who've lost their job, those with pre-existing conditions. You know, that's an issue that you have to try to address. And I think what we say is let private insurance provide that as opposed to government. And that is the hardest nut to crack, and that is the greatest need today with health care and the rising costs. Chairman Bernanke actually said that even the cost, if the costs don't increase, we're on a collision course. Our spending, even today, has to come down, and that's with all the baby boomers hitting retirement age. And you know, our deficit and our spending are unsustainable.
Yeah, it's anyone who didn't doubt that or anyone who doubted it was a very complex problem and probably has been humbled by just the past few weeks, Congressman. Good to see you again. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Carl. And let me say this. We've got to do something about those that lose their job and lose their insurance, and maybe an extension of COBRA.
Yeah, we'll be looking for that down the road. Congressman, we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right, up next.